Good evening, darlings. The time has come to build a cardboard harp. Spoke to Dr. Dennis Waring. He's a very nice, friendly person. He's the author of several books on how to make your own folk instruments, and I'm very jazzed to be building a harp. Now let's see what's in this harp kit. We've got our cardboard sound box. We've got pegs, a tuning wrench. There's a couple of bands of some sort. Plastic, colorful bands. I don't know. Got strings. I ordered an extra set of strings. And the lovely manual. Here's our lumber. Lots of nice, beautiful brown paper. No bubbles. Environmentally friendly. So one thing that confuses me is that they tell you to, if you're going to paint your harp, they want you to paint it before you assemble it. And I would worry that, like, if there was paint in between the glued parts, that, like, it would be less strong than glue. So last night, against my better judgment, I painted the inside of the sound box, even though I was like, well, shouldn't it be glued before being painted? According to the booklet, just paint it. And then today, I looked at the videos, and he's like, oh, actually, you shouldn't get paint on the part that's going to be glued. And I'm like, well, now you tell me. I painted it shut. It doesn't want to open. That's probably a good thing, right? Shazam. If I had this to do over again, I would not paint it shut. This is a terrible idea. The worst idea. Whose idea was this? Yeah. Terrible, terrible idea. Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah, definitely don't do that unless you're ready to glue your thing together right at that moment. So now I have to touch up the parts of the cardboard that are now slightly screwed up. But I sort of wanted to put another coat of this paint on the interior anyway. It's more protected from the elements than in its cardboard state. And I gotta say, this little note in here that says, hey, by the way, the construction of the double strung is just like this single strung. I think it's a missed opportunity. You should take this slip of paper to tell me the difference is XYZ instead of saying, you'll be fine. It's going to be interesting when I'm trying to, like, put the pins in the other side, you know, because if you only have one row of pins to put in on one side, then you're putting the wood flat against the table, but then when you go to put the other pins in the other side, you're like hammering on the pins that are already in there on the other side, you know what I mean? I thought on the video he put the pins in before the bridges, because then he used rubber bands to, like, around the pins to hold the bridges on. So it's like the manual is telling you one thing and then the video is telling you something else. But I don't know, I sort of think that, like, this manual, he probably printed like 1 million of them like 30 years ago, and you know, he's not printing new manual, he's just like adding like little slips of paper to give you extra information, right? But we are getting some different information from different sources here. So I think I'm going to go with the video method of doing the pins first. Okay, I got both rows of my zither pins on. This did take a little doing. My wrists are a little tired, but that's okay. I wanted to attach my frame to my sound box before this paint kind of dried, so I don't want it to dry messed up again, right? Now put an amount of glue on here. It doesn't really seem like a lot to me, but I really don't want to get it in my string holes. So, oy vey. Well, it's going to be typical of my work that might be a little messy, but it should be strong at the end of the day. I'm really mostly worried about like the ends of these things not tucking in enough. Oh yeah, good. Let's impale the sound box with a screwdriver. That's capital suggestion. Capital. Well, I sure hope it's going to dry okay. I guess I'll let it dry first. Unbelievable. I had it on the wrong way. There's cardboard in the way of some of my string holes when I poked them with a needle. And I was like, I attached this thing upside down. So, I'm gonna just fix that now. All I can say is, I'm really glad I checked, because I had the pins over here and the other side over here. My frame was upside down. If I had let it dry that way, I wouldn't have been able to get all my strings in there. And then, yeah, it would have been freaking upside down, people. Fortunately, I was able to fix it in time. I went ahead and reinforced this whole seam on all sides with a lot of extra glue. You know, when this dries, I'm gonna go in underneath and probably paint glue on the other side too, just to reinforce it. You know, by the time this thing is done, it will have doubled its weight with all the extra glue and paint that I'm going to use to reinforce the thing. And I'm also not worried about the texture of all the splatters and whatnot, because I'm gonna do kind of like a textured paint job over it anyway. So as you can see, having to rip the frame off and then reattach it inevitably caused the joining here to be not quite as good. It's like lifting up a little bit, so I'm having to go through and like, you know, put a little bit of glue in between each hole to try to fill in these cracks. So it's going to take several passes, just because obviously I don't want to get glue in the holes. Alright, so I've got the house paint all over the whole harp, and I'm going to be adding the acrylic next. So I really went in with all this paint to fill all the cracks. But even if I didn't, like even if I assembled this thing perfectly, I would still be using like a ton of paint and glue, because I want it to be really sturdy, because it will be going camping with me. So now the time has come to paint it with my lovely rose gold acrylics. Let's see how it goes. This paint sucks so bad. It sucks. It's horrible. Don't buy this paint unless maybe you're pouring it. I don't know. This paint is garbage. Look at this. What is that? What is that? What is that? Bad paint. Bad, bad paint. Look at this. I have to puddle the stuff on here. I have to dot it on copiously to get it to even consider like sticking. It's bad. It's terrible. I'm gonna make a fine result, but like, damn, this is gonna take forever. I'm not gonna spend a week of my life applying thin layers to get good coverage. 10 layers. This paint is terrible. Do you know how many coats of paint it would take? Look at this. You know how many coats of paint it would take to get a good coverage with that? I'd like to go ahead and amend my previous verdict on this metallic paint. As you can see, when I apply it directly to the wood, it shows up just fine. It's very lovely. It's really just on the house paint that I have to cake it on so much to make it show up, but that really, I think, just speaks to the imperviousness of the house paint. How many different mistakes can I make and then have to fix? I never put my bridge on the harp, and after I put my pins on there, and so now I've painted the thing into oblivion, and you know, onto that oblivion I'm gonna have to try to glue this bridge now, so that's gonna be interesting. Alright, I need to go ahead and add my bridge here. You know, I didn't refer back to the manual. I'm not really sure why I haven't had my nose in the manual the whole time. It's sort of like, you know, I read it once and then I watched the video and then kind of flew out on my own, but I'm sure once I add a whole bunch of glue and paint and shellac it, just shellac that mofo, it'll be fine. Alright, I've got the whole heart painted here. I really caked the paint on because I like it that way. I think it makes it look more dimensional, more organic, and you know, I don't like my stuff too prissy. I really sort of filled up these little corrugations with paint too, just to make them stronger. And so now I just have to, oh yeah, and I painted around the holes just like that so I wouldn't get the paint in them. And now I just have to wait for it to dry so that I can string it up, and then we will be ready to play. I'm super, super excited. So not surprisingly, I really just couldn't make myself wait until tomorrow to string this up. So if I have a few extra fingerprints in my paint job, I don't really care. I'll probably paint designs over it at some point. The disasters never end. You know, I've been praising myself, like, oh, the one thing I got right was the bridge pins, right? You know, I had them all straight, I had them in a row, they all were fine, you know, until a few hours into stringing this thing up, I realized that I had them in too deep, and you know, this piece of wood is quite thin, and there's two different rows of pins going into the same piece of wood, and I had them in too deep, and so, you know, the wood, I started seeing it was like erupting. It was really scary, and it's like bubbling and stuff, and so I had to like loosen all the pins drastically. I really have to call it a night and get back on this tomorrow, because wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we basically have a harp. Double strung. The final thing I want to say is that to have 2 rows of pins in a very narrow piece of wood like this really makes me worry about it. I think it would be better if this piece of wood was a little bit wider, because it's really too easy to end up with your bridge pins poking through the other side of the piece here and just splitting the wood right open. And I'm pretty concerned about that, because I did have them in too deep and they did start to come out the other side. And so I'm pretty worried about the integrity of the piece, and I think that to make this a bit wider could really help avoid that problem. In the process of trying to like pull the pins back out again and restring it again, I did have a few strings break just from constantly trying to adjust them and restring them. I feel as though these strings that came with it are a bit brittle, but I felt like after they were manipulated a few times they started breaking, and that was kind of frustrating. Fortunately, I did order another set of strings, so I had to dip into that a little bit. So basically, I'm hoping that this harp will last me at least a year, and then you know, I can get another one next year. I definitely do want to build more harps. There's no question. I'm not discouraged by the problems that I ran into. You know, the first time I do something, I tend to do it wrong, and then I have to, you know, do it better next time. I could have been more cautious and gone with a smaller harp for my first one. I could have done a mini harp, you know, or a single or whatever, but I really wanted the double string, so I did it. And if this lasts me a year, I will be happy. And then, you know, I'll build another, and then I won't have to make so many mistakes in that one. But as of now, this harp is playing. I'll have to keep tuning it. I would really like a shoulder strap because that's how I'm used to playing. I really never got into playing like just balancing it or knee bones. And as another person has pointed out, you know, it's pretty light, so it's not really, when it rests on you, there's not much weight to like hold it on your shoulder. So that makes me want a shoulder strap even more, although I want one anyway. But to try to figure out how to install one after the fact, I'm not really sure how I'm going to do that. I think if I was to do it over again, I would probably go in here before putting it together and install, you know, a nut or whatever through like the multi-layers of cardboard. Same on the bottom. I feel like the parts where it's just one layer, I would worry about it. But I think if the strap was attached through multiple layers of cardboard on either end, then that would have been the best solution. I'm not really sure how. I mean, there is space here that I could potentially attach some kind of strap, but there isn't a space on the bottom. And also, I'll note that the strings are so close to this part here that if you want to pick your harp up like this, which I think is the way you're supposed to, you're kind of running into your strings a little bit. So I think it would be better to have a bit more of a gap here. There's like a lot more space here, and there's like almost no space here. So I have to figure out how I'm going to add a strap. I mean, there is a spot down here, actually, that might be my best bet for like trying to attach some kind of strap. Like use this space from this space, and then to screw it into this part, I might be able to successfully make a strap. I can try to play this, but I haven't been playing the harp for a number of years, so I don't know what's going to happen. But the cool thing is it's a double strung, and so you can get these echoes, you know. You can play in unison. have the technique to do that properly, but at least you can see how that works. You know, actually, I think with the double strung, you almost have the option to play on your left shoulder instead of your right shoulder. I think I like that. I think I can see better when it's on my left shoulder. Although I really need to learn to play without looking at my strings, because that tends to be my downfall. Alright, well, there is a harp. It is working at this time, despite all the issues. It is currently working. Let's see how long it's able to sustain its, livelihood. On a final note, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take this moment to remind you that all the mistakes that I made with this construction were my own fault and could have been avoided with careful and varied research and double and triple checking my work before doing anything, but that's not really the way I work when it comes to just fun, creative stuff that I'm just doing for me. Now, if I depended on this harp for my livelihood, if it was my last chance to do something like this, I would probably be more careful, but that's really not what's going on. Art and crafts, I think, are a wonderful playground because the stakes aren't so high. You don't have to worry so much if something doesn't come out right. Art is great because you can allow disasters to happen. As much as I think surgery is super cool and, I think it would be fun to do, you would not want me as a surgeon. When I'm working creatively, my thought is like, okay, well, if I mess up the first time, I'll go on to the next one, or, I'll make a bunch, but that doesn't work very well with human life. It works well with, wood and glue and paint and things like that. But I think one of the greatest freedoms in art is that you can take risks in art that you would never take in life. And it's okay. Bit of philosophy for you.